Welcome back to my channel. I truly appreciate your loyalty. Well, it's time for a new story, a new trip into the gray area between life and death, the inexplainable and bizarre. So sit back, close your eyes, and listen. I sat in the lawyer's office feeling numb. I was still reeling from losing the only person who saw me, who valued me. My parents, aunts, and uncles all sat on the edge of their seats, eagerly waiting to hear what Grandpa Logan Whitmore left them. I could almost hear him saying how greedy they were. The lawyer, Mr. Singleton, was in his mid-50s with serious eyes. He was Grandpa's friend for over 50 years. He wore a gray pinstripe suit and a burgundy tie against his crisp white shirt. He cleared his throat and began reading from a thick folder. I sort of drifted off, half listening because the will was several pages long and tediously detailed. Grandpa was a stickler for order. I half listened until I heard my mother, Angela, speak. "Oh, I'm so relieved." Grandpa left the company to her and Dad. The aunts and uncles got shares in Grandpa's other businesses, however. The company was left in its entirety to my parents. A large revolutionary technology company he had started in his early 20s. He was a whiz when it came to things involving technology. I remember when I was much younger, an eager teen coder, that he would show me his latest piece of tech. Back then, I was interested. Back then, I understood what he was showing me. I even worked as a developer in one of his departments. I was lead coder. 2 years ago, all my enthusiasm for technology shifted. Grandpa and I started working on something we'd kept secret from everyone. We worked tirelessly on an experiment we called Echo. Echo was a cross between crazy and genius depending on the day. We were able to reach back in time to hear echoes of past events, snippets of conversations. All those echoes were all concentrated in one place. The old house. The house had been in the family for generations. As children, we used to spend summers there. It was a big, sprawling mansion, dating back to the 1800s. The house used to belong to the distinguished Whitmore family. They were plantation owners whose slaves produced cotton and tobacco. The family lost their workforce once freedom came, and their wealth dwindled down to nothing. One day they just packed up and left. The few freed slaves who'd stayed to work the land and maintain the property took over. Those were my relatives. No one ever came back to claim the land or the house. The property became legally theirs, and they changed their name, dropping that extra O. Back in those days, money was hard to come by, and my relatives took to selling parcels of land to keep solvent. It always puzzled me why them white folks never thought to sell some of their land. I mean, it would have kept them owners. Sometimes I wondered why they left everything behind. Today, the house and the surrounding acreage is all that's left. Grandpa paid for my education. I took classes in technology, coding, and a lot of science. I graduated with a degree in physics, concentrating in optics and electromagnetism. My parents couldn't understand any of it, but Grandpa did, and that's where the old house came in. The concept of Project Echo was not necessarily how sound traveled. It had more to do with where did it go and how to retrieve it. Science journals say that energy is absorbed and released in small discrete quantities, and that all matter displays both wave-like and particle-like properties. I won't bore you with explanations you probably won't understand. To put it simply, Grandpa and I wanted to prove that sounds leave echoes, something like light traveling. The hard part was isolating the sound waves. Once we stabilized them, we went on to our next step, which was to gather the sounds and make them physical. It's something similar to talking on the telephone. The sound travels along the wires and become audible on the other end, to put it simply. It was a good thing that Grandpa had money. Our equipment was costly. We wanted to grab sounds from the past and bring them to the present. The first time we succeeded, Grandpa was ecstatic but not satisfied. We were able to hear what we said a few hours prior. He wanted to reach back even further. We kept at it until we reached back a few years. Grandpa suffered a violent heart attack before we could experiment further. It had happened quickly. So here we all are, listening to Mr. Singleton drone on about who got what. To my granddaughter, Bethany Whitmore, I leave the house in South Carolina and all its contents. Seriously, what is she going to do with that monstrosity of a house? Asked a cousin. I made a show of acceptance and nodded at the lawyer. Grandpa had already warned me that the family would have objections, which was specifically why he willed it to me. I fully intend to live in the house. My parents didn't object and only insisted on seeing it before I moved in. They came under the pretense of having it inspected, but it was to see if there was anything of value they could take. The furniture was minimal and old. The appliances in the kitchen were outdated. There wasn't anything that caught their eye, except for the property itself. "This house is too big for a young, single girl like you. Why don't you let us help you sell it?" asked my father. I could almost see the dollar signs in his eyes. "I don't think Grandpa would like it if we sold the place. Besides, I like it. It has character," I told them at dinner. "You and Grandpa spent a lot of time here before he passed. Was he working on anything new?" asked my mother. She had dollar signs in her eyes too. I could see the wheels turning in their heads. They didn't know anything about technology other than using their smartphones. All the work at Whitmore Tech was done by dedicated people handpicked by my grandfather. My dad was the new CEO, and I could foresee him running the company into the ground for every penny he could extract. My mother was no better. They've been living off dividends they collected each month. When they finally left, I heaved a sigh and made plans to start getting organized. I wanted to get settled and to continue the work on Echo. Sometime during the night, I was awakened by sounds coming from the hallway outside my bedroom door. I looked at the time on my phone. It was just a few minutes past midnight. I slid out of bed and pressed my ear to the door. The whispers were in varying degrees of loudness. Did my parents come back? I opened the door quickly and the whispers stopped. I reached around to the light switch on the wall outside the door. The hallway flooded with light. All I could see was dust floating in the air from my sudden move. I sneezed and shook my head. I was just tired and I went back to bed yawning loudly. In the morning, I got up early to give the house a good cleaning. I wrapped my hair up in a scarf and went to work. I started downstairs and worked my way up. By late afternoon, I had the furniture dusted, floors vacuumed and mopped. There were 3 bedrooms upstairs. I focused more on the one I took from my bedroom. Between cleaning, I called Uber Eats for groceries. I prefer to cook my own meals because I was weird like that. I sat at the table in my clean kitchen to eat my meal of baked chicken, wild rice, and green beans. I was washing dishes when I heard voices upstairs. At first, I thought I'd left the TV on, but once I got up there, the voices stopped. The TV wasn't on either. Then I heard the voices downstairs. I turned quickly to go check. The problem with these homes was that they had back entrances and hallways from slavery days. Did someone enter the house through that way? I rushed downstairs. I reached for the doorknob of the back door. It was locked. I opened it and walked the short hallway. My footsteps echoed in it. It was dark and empty, and I hadn't gotten around to replacing the light bulbs yet. "Is someone there?" I called out. Nothing. I went back to the main living area. The last experiment Grandpa and I worked on involved a conversation between the mistress of the house and a slave girl named Millie. "Millie, these floors are looking dreadful. I want them polished to a shine at once." "Yes, ma'am," answered Millie. Grandpa and I celebrated that evening. We had records from those days, and the slaves' names were meticulously documented. Millie had been one of the house slaves. 4 men and women who maintained the house. There was a cook, maid, footman, and butler. So far, we'd only been able to capture that one conversation. I suggested that we test other rooms, but he died before we could test that theory. I felt a chill run down my spine. I suddenly realized that I was hearing the whispers without any instruments. How is that possible? I hurried to the basement where we'd set up our instruments. It was the only area in the whole house that had been renovated and kept clean. Everything was still covered. Nothing was on. Very odd. The whole area was insulated to keep the outside from interfering. I walked back upstairs trying to puzzle out what was going on. Grandpa stayed a week in the house by himself. Did he do something to the instruments? I had his notes from that time. I needed to understand what he'd done, if anything. A knock on the door startled me, and I went to see who it was. An old woman stood on the porch. Her hair was completely white, and she looked frail. "Can I help you?" I asked. "Are you Dr. Whitmore's granddaughter?" I nodded. "Yes, can I help you?" I asked again. She handed me a big manila envelope. "He asked me to hold this for you, so here you go." I took it from her and smiled. "Would you like to come in?" She pushed past me and walked right in. "Don't mind if I do. I always wondered what this house looked like on the inside." "Can I offer you something, Ms.?" Oh, look at me forgetting my manners. You may call me Miss Sophia. Can I offer you some iced tea, Miss Sophia? For someone who doesn't know what the inside of the house looked like, she walked unerringly to the kitchen. I found her already sitting down at the table. I placed a glass and pitcher on the table and poured her a glass. She reached for it eagerly, but her eyes darted from corner to corner. Do you live close by, Miss Sophia? I asked. She pointed vaguely. Just a few houses down. I grew up in the neighborhood. Your grandfather and I went to school together, she supplied. I was sorry to hear that he passed. Yes, it was sudden. A heart attack. She stood up. That's the best way to go. Quick like. I walked her to the door and she turned to stare at me. If you need anything, stop by. I'm always home. I shut the door behind her, frowning. What a peculiar person, I thought. I waited until I was back up in my bedroom before opening the envelope. I examined it carefully. It didn't look like it was opened, and the handwriting on it was clearly Grandpa's. Inside was the notes I thought I'd find in the binder we kept together. I wondered why he gave them to Sophia. Well, that's it for now. Are you as curious as I am? Why did Grandpa give Sophia his notes to hold? And is she trustworthy? Comment below what you think, and don't forget to like and subscribe.